I'll take stepping in someone's pee over awkward conversation, I guess. That's something I suppose I now know about myself from living in this place. But what I'm going to say is that it's been a trip down memory lane, I suppose. Is it a bit of an area guide? Yeah, sure. Am I going to tell you what I paid in rent at whatever point I lived in this place? Yeah. Am I going to give comparisons to what it would be today? Because I did do that research. Yeah. Now I guess I would say I'm in my 12th year of my relationship with London. I haven't lived here for a full continuous 12 years, but I have lived here for many years out of the last 12, and I arrived here for the first time 12 years ago, and so that's it's a bit of time. I've had 6 different addresses. I am in address number 6. I obviously have not included this one on this list because why would I? And I guess I've also lived in a lot of different types of areas. I have lived both in the very trendy, cool, supposedly, areas. I've lived in areas that are considered fairly undesirable. I have lived all over the place. So the thing is, I've done this as a ranking list where I will be ranking my past places of residence from the bottom to the top. We're going to start off with my bottom ranking, and in my bottom number 5 spot, and that is Whitechapel. What I will say about Whitechapel is that I have nothing against the area in itself at all. What I will say is the place I lived in Whitechapel was the bleakest and also maybe possibly scariest living experience I have had in London and also anywhere else in the world. And so what brought me there? You might be wondering, well, I moved to Whitechapel because I just wanted to change. I wanted to try out living in East London because, East London has this certain cachet. It's kind of seen as being a little bit cool, trendy, whatever. I don't know if Whitechapel would be in the heart of cool, trendy London, but it's in the area of some areas that are considered to be quite, on the cutting edge. Now, when I decided to move, I ended up finding a rental company. They rent out individual rooms in pre-existing flat shares. Now, what this means is you don't have to go through the same, flatmate interview process that you might have to go through if you're doing a lot of other flat share situations. This was just it felt very smooth. It felt very easy. I was not really in the mood to go and put myself out there for potential flatmates and have them ask questions of me and what's my living style? Oh, what do I do for work? How often am I at home? Am I the type of person who likes to have a chat in the kitchen or not? And see, the thing is, I'm always going to say, yeah, I love to have a chat in the kitchen. No, actually, I hate that so much. I just want to cook my food in peace, but I would never tell anyone that in these flatmate interviews. So, I guess I always come out of them feeling incredibly disingenuous, and then I end up probably being a disappointment to the flatmates because they're oh, we thought we were getting this really sociable, outgoing person, and actually she just wants to cook her food and go to her room. And I'm yeah. So I thought I was being very clever, subverting that, and then I moved into this place. And now, the main selling point, the main reason why I took it was that it was a huge bedroom. It was a huge bedroom. It was about almost £700 per month. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, it was maybe $690 or $695, something like that. And the bedroom had a couch in it, which I thought was kind of cool. I was oh, wow. It's having a bedroom and a living room all in one. Now, the rest of the flat, though, left a lot to be desired. It had just a general griminess. I felt it had not been cleaned in several decades, which was probably true. The kitchen had almost no workspace, and it had one of those toilets that was separate from the sink and shower, which I guess I kind of understand. You do see these around London sometimes, and it's supposed to be oh, well, if you're sharing a home with a lot of people, then one person can use the toilet while another person is showering. However, functionally it doesn't work because the toilet room doesn't have a sink. So you go to the toilet and then you've just got dirty hands, and I guess you got to go wash them in the kitchen sink, which again just doesn't seem to make sense. Anyway, it drove me crazy. I thought it was stupid. And like, that was not the worst of it though. The worst was that I ended up living with 3 guys I didn't know and did not have a chance to meet before I was like fully committed to moving in. And once I moved in, I was like, oh wait, I think maybe these guys are kind of creepy. Like, ooh, did I make a mistake here? Good thing my door has a lock. Like, it was not that they were necessarily mean to me or directly creepy towards me. However, I learned that, 2 of the 3 worked in fashion, but over time I started to really suspect that they did not work in fashion, and in fact might have worked in another, possibly less legal industry. I don't know if this is true, but I suspected. And so after about 4 months, I was like, actually, you know what? I don't really feel safe in this situation. I feel like weird things are going on, and I think I'm going to leave. So I emailed the rental company and I said, my circumstances have changed. I got to go. And fortunately, it was just a month-to-month contract, so I didn't have to like break a contract and pay fees or something. And I was just like, I was out of there. And like, was I sad to leave Whitechapel as an area? I mean, it was not bad. Like, the pros of Whitechapel, I guess, like, first I would say the transportation links, very good. Like, you have a Whitechapel station, you have several tube lines, now the Elizabeth line as well, that was not there at the time, going through the station. You have the overground, so you can get a lot of places quite easily. It was also not too far from Bethnal Green, so I really had 2 stations I could use where I could get pretty much anywhere I wanted within, like, an hour or less. So that was pretty nice. Whitechapel Market, it's a good market for like functional stuff, I guess. I didn't really shop there so much, but like, it was like a nice experience to wander through. I thought, like, kind of made me feel like I'm in a big city, a big multicultural city, which I am in London. And, I like to remind myself of that every now and then. And what else? Pubs were fine. They were, pretty nice pubs, not pubs that I return to all the time, but, they served their purpose. And, like, the area was not maybe the most beautiful, but it did the job. Like, it was close to stuff, and maybe that's all I really needed. Okay, moving along to spot number 4 on the list. And this is the spot that I assign with like the most guilt, I guess, where it's like, I feel like I'm being really unfair in assigning this ranking because I really didn't have a bad time living there, but this 4th spot is South Tottenham. And now the reason I feel so bad about that is because South Tottenham gets such a bad rap generally. Like, people are like, oh, it's so dangerous. Like, ooh, no one wants to live there. Ooh, you wouldn't even want to go there. And like, I found that to be just like blatantly untrue. Like, it did not feel unsafe. It did not feel like a place that I wouldn't want to, well, I mean, would I want to walk down, say, West Green Road at night as a woman by herself? Maybe not. And I mean, I really didn't do that much when I lived there, admittedly, but I wouldn't say that it felt dangerous. It was a fine place to live. I had a beautiful room in like an old house. I lived on the top floor. It was like a loft conversion sort of situation. So I had quite a large bedroom with a bathroom of my own. That was quite nice. Very comfortable, very calm, very quiet, all for £600 per month. And then, it being like a house share, a 3-bedroom house share, I also had access to quite a large kitchen, a shared kitchen, which obviously is not my favorite, but I dealt with it, and also had a garden, which is good. In that area, you're probably going to have a garden in many of the places you can possibly live, and it's nice. Like, it's nice to have that outdoor space in a city. And I would say the only reason I give this like my lower ranking is just because of a general lack of amenities in the area. Like, there's not a lot going on around there. There are not a lot of like pubs to go to. You don't even have a lot of like cafes and stuff really where you can like sit and do some work, or at least like at the time you didn't. In going back, I did notice that there are a few more now than there were at the time. So like, oh, well, gradually gentrifying. That's actually probably not a good thing. Like, maybe it should have just stayed as it was, because like, I know that means people are getting kicked out of their homes probably as these like wealthier people move in. I don't think it's a good thing. I think it should have stayed as it was. And I don't know if I was part of the problem there, but And that's what I got to say about that. I would say like of the places on my list, like this is still the one that would be probably like relatively affordable if you wanted to live there today. It's not super affordable. It's not as affordable, it seems, as it was back when I lived there, but on the same street that I lived on, you can get a very, very similar room, not the same room, but a very similar room for $900 per month, which, like, again, not amazing, but like probably better than you would get in a lot of parts of London. So you know, it's take it as you will. Now we're on to my dead center third ranking, which is London Fields. Now this one surprised me because like I thought, first of all, that I would enjoy London Fields a lot more than I actually did. And like, I could also imagine though people saying like, wow, like why would you rank that so low? Like what a cool area you had a chance to live in. And I could also imagine some people being like, ugh, yeah, like why wouldn't you rank it last? And so maybe like the dead center ranking actually makes sense. Because yeah, when I moved there, I thought I would enjoy it so much more than I actually did. I thought it would be like such a cool, vibrant area to live in. I thought, oh, look at all the cool pubs. Look, you've got Broadway Market, like this, you know, very nice weekend market that sells good food and like arts and crafts and stuff. Ooh, look, you have London Fields, the park, you have Victoria Park, you have the canal that you can walk along. Like this area has everything to recommend it. And all of that is true. And also, actually living there was quite a different story. So I didn't realize what it was when I was living there for real, but what I did realize after the fact, when I lived in the very similar area of Williamsburg, Brooklyn, was that each day, stepping out your front door, you kind of got a sense that you were stepping directly into Instagram, essentially. And we're talking kind of like millennial influencer Instagram. And it's not a good place to be when you find yourself, say, feeling a little messy, maybe a little hungover, just not your best self. Oh no, and now I'm like, I have all these like pristine, like beige wearing girls to compare myself to. Oh, wonderful. It was hard. And then I think also it was just like the experience of going to like these nice pubs that are dotted around London Fields is that they're so busy that usually you cannot get a table and cannot hear yourself think. Broadway Market is very pleasant. Like I do enjoy the food stalls. I enjoy looking at the things people are selling. However, it also can feel like a little bit, you know, the goers of Broadway Market can feel a little bit pretentious, a little bit maybe mean, a little bit judgmental. Not everyone, but you know, it can feel a little like you can feel a little uncomfortable in yourself when you're just living there. Now, is it a nice place to go for a day out? Yeah, it is. In the same way that, say, the canal is nice to walk along sometimes, but it gets so busy and you're dodging so many runners and bikes, particularly in that stretch of the canal, that you don't have an enjoyable time walking along it. Like that's kind of the experience. What I will say about the flat I lived in when I lived in London Fields is that it was decent, and it actually turned out to be the cheapest of any place I lived in London, which probably was quite an outlier. I don't think you would find many for that price, but yeah, in 2018 I paid $495 per month. Almost definitely could not get something equivalent in the area today. When I checked, in the building next door currently for rent, there is a 2-bedroom flat for £2,235 per month, I believe. Not affordable in the slightest, and I don't think you'd find many affordable things in that area, so take that as you will. We're on to my number 2 spot, and so that is London Bridge. Now, I know, it's like, wow, how is that even possible? That's so central. And my answer to that was, well, it was 2012. And now, like, yeah, and this would also be completely unattainable today, as like also demonstrated by the quick search I did of rents in the area, where it's like you could probably get an equivalent place for no less than £3,000 per month. Yeah, for a 3-bedroom flat, whereas at the time in 2012, I think I paid somewhere in the 500s per month for a room in a 3-bedroom flat. Just, how times change. For being so central, it was very calm, it was very peaceful. One of the highlights was, of course, the South Bank. To walk along the South Bank, especially, like, my tip would be a winter evening is the best time to walk the South Bank, because it's not going to have the crowds of tourists you would get on, say, a summer afternoon. It's perfect. You still get those like beautiful views. You've still got the glitter of the lights on the water. Like, it's really nice. The flat was nothing special. It was just a kind of average, 3-bedroom flat. I had a tiny bedroom, but it did have like a good, decent, workable kitchen. It had a living room, all that, and it was fine. So we have reached our final destination, our final winning destination, and where are we? That's like a good question. That is the question that actually many have tried to answer. Few have succeeded. I landed ultimately when I was actually living here on Upper Holloway as a description for it. Could have been Archway. You could say even Crouch Hill. Generally in London, you name a location by like whatever the nearest station is. Those are some of the nearby stations. And even like my I want to say boyfriend, because he was my boyfriend when I was living here, but now husband. But anyway, he's a native Londoner, and even him, he had no idea what to call this area. He was like, and he agrees that it could be called Upper Holloway. Who even knows though? And I think that is part of the charm of it, because in living somewhere that like I could never quite accurately describe to anyone else, it did sort of feel like it was my little secret. What got this place top billing? I would say it's the magical confluence, if that's the word, of the flat itself and the location. And so let's start with the flat itself. £715 per month for incredible privacy. I mean, at least for someone who is like a student in London. Like, I had my own room, and I also had my own kitchen. Now, I did have to share a bathroom with the other guy on the floor, and that was a little bit questionable, a little bit, you could say, gross. Legend has it that when my parents stayed there once, I told my mom, just don't overthink the bathroom situation, and she came back and she was like, yeah, maybe you should have overthought that a little bit more, because, and I have to say, though, I couldn't really overthink it too much, because what I got in exchange for maybe occasionally walking through some basic strangers possibly pee on the floor was this incredible privacy where I didn't have to have awkward small talk in the kitchen with flatmates. And so that ultimately won the day for me. I mean, that, like, you can't get anything quite better than that, honestly. I'll take stepping in someone's pee over awkward conversation, I guess. That's something I suppose I now know about myself from living in this place. Now, this place was not fancy. There was a big water stain in the ceiling. It didn't usually leak. It had, this was nice, like a fireplace. I mean, not a working fireplace, but an old fireplace, which just made me feel so cozy and calm and comforted every time I looked at it. It had a beautiful view out over the rooftops, and you'd see these old buildings, stacked chimneys. It made me feel very much like, hey, I'm in London. Would you believe it? Like, I made it here. What? It was amazing. The kitchen was nothing to write home about. It was pretty small. It did not, as many UK kitchens do, have a washing machine, which was a big drawback. So I did have to go to the laundrette. But, again, trade-offs. Like, I couldn't wash my clothes in my own place, but again, I got to avoid awkward small talk in the kitchen when I'm trying to just cook my dinner. So again, like, can you really blame me for preferring the laundrette situation? I think it all makes sense. I think also, though, the area was just like an area of intense peace. It looks like I'm in a full-on forest right now, doesn't it? But I am not. I am just in a park that is like literally across the street from where I used to live. You've got buses passing by. There's one right now. And the streets are tree-lined. The buildings are old and a little bit grand, and it just feels just so calm. And maybe by calm, I mean rich. And maybe that makes sense, because what does money buy you but the time to be calm isn't that right? I think, I don't know. I mean, that's the only reason why I think I want to make money, is just to be able to buy myself some calm. You've got like Crouch End right over the hill. I'll probably go over there next. And I mean, it's bougie, It's like very wealthy, very moneyed, very upper middle class, but kind of in a very like understated way. Like, people aren't flaunting their wealth there, which is, that's quite comforting, to know you're around money, but it's not being shoved down your throat. You do have some nice pubs in that area as well. You have like, the very, the more expensive of the chain grocery stores, namely a Waitrose and an M&S, which again, I would go there and get some, get an M&S like microwave dinner and feel like very wealthy, very special, very bougie. And it was nice. It was a nice way to spend a Saturday afternoon, probably a nicer way than the way I'm spending this Saturday afternoon, if I'm honest. When I came up with this idea, I thought I would end on some tips. Like, if you too want to have such a varied experience of life in London, here's what you can do. But as I revisited my former places of residence, and as I also, and this was very critical to the realization I'm about to drop here, as I looked at current rents in the area for similar places, I came to this kind of sad realization that maybe the life that I had here, the life that I was living here, wouldn't really be so possible for someone in a very similar position as me to start off. What I really noticed was like ultimately how many actually pretty good deals I got. How I got to live in like quite central, quite interesting places, while also paying rent that like, even for me, like as a student here, like did not break the bank. Like, I was able to subsist on like my part-time job. What I realize now is like, you can hardly find a place anywhere, it seems, for like under $1,000 a month. Like, I'm just talking a room. I'm talking a room in a shared flat. Like, we're not even talking like high quality places. We're talking like pretty far out, not necessarily well connected. And it just like strikes me as like just super disappointing. You hear all this stuff about how the cost of living in London has like really skyrocketed, and how like it's becoming a city that's unaffordable to almost anyone but like the very wealthy. And I think that's true. Like, I think it would be very hard today for a student, say, to start off here and to like really make it work without like a substantial amount of family money backing them up. Even for someone starting off in a job, like, I wonder like how, if you're like just getting into something, how do you make it happen? Like, and maybe people have figured out like better answers than I have, and maybe like I'm not thinking outside the box enough, but like, wow, like it's pretty bleak out there, just like kind of doing these scans of like rental websites, and I'm like, ooh, wow, this is a lot. And I mean, this is not even like factoring in like the costs of just like stuff like food and entertainment, because if you're living in a place like London, you want to be entertained. I don't know. Also, on a purely selfish level, it depresses me, because like I think that the more a city goes towards the expensive, inaccessible to everyone but the very rich, like it definitely like makes the character of the city less interesting. Like, if you're not going to have like students and young people and artists who are not from like already rich backgrounds, like, well, what do you have left? And I think that's kind of like, I kind of feel it sometimes when I'm around London, just like I kind of feel this almost like flattening of experience. I kind of feel like everyone is coming from the same perspective, and those who are coming from different perspectives don't really have a place here. I would hope like this will break down at some point, and rent controls will be implemented, or something will happen, or like public housing will be expanded and made more accessible to people from a whole variety of backgrounds. I don't know, but like something's got to give here. I guess maybe I have like a couple of pieces of advice, and maybe one tip from like all of these years, because I think a lot of like the old advice I would have is like no longer relevant, because like I don't have tricks for like finding affordable places anymore, really. Like, I don't know. Like, I did manage to do it, and I mean, I did it just by like searching online. Like I didn't have any other ways of really finding like really cheap places. Would just be like, oh wow, oh, that's 495 pounds per month. Oh, let me get in there and look at it. I mean, yeah, it's just like how much time you spend on the websites looking for stuff, and then I think a speed game. Just be the first to get in there with an inquiry, like as it would be in any city. Like it's not rocket science. But one point to like keep in mind, I guess, like if you are a foreigner like me, one thing in like the rental game that you have to keep in mind though as a foreigner is that unless you have a UK-based guarantor, your only real path to renting a flat is to pay basically 6 months rent upfront, which is a lot. And I have managed to do that before. And well, I mean, it's like, if you have the savings to do it, like it's fine, you know, because I guess then you have 6 months that you're just not paying rent on a monthly basis. But like, yeah, like you might have to come in with like a little bit more than you would even expect. Yeah, I mean, I guess like one pretty like from my stories that I've told here, yeah, like avoid moving into a flat without meeting the people first. I mean, yeah, that should be pretty self-explanatory, and I mean also probably should be self-evident to just about anyone. But yeah, it wasn't to me, obviously. So if you find yourself in that position, maybe take a step back and think, how bad would it truly be, either to stay put where I am, or to just like meet with potential flatmates and go through that painful process of like talking to them about your living style preferences. Like just go through that painful process, because it will save you more pain in the future. And I guess finally, the only tip I really have, and I mean, I guess this is a tip that kind of connects back to how I got the place in London Bridge in 2012 for like actually quite a cheap price, which is to like kind of partner up with other people. And if you are moving to London as a new London resident, to like partner up with someone who knows the city a bit better can be like a really great way to get insight into like how things work and to get maybe access to a better standard of accommodation than you might otherwise get. And so when I moved to the place in London Bridge, what I did like while I was like still in the US was I put like a flatmate wanted ad on a website called Spare Room, and just like described myself and what my situation was and what I was looking for. And I met a couple of people who were also just like already in London looking for flatmates, and basically like they ended up finding the place that I wound up living in before I even went to London. And so like when I arrived to do my master's, I had a place to live already, like all set up. And like it worked really well actually. And you know, yeah, it was a little scary kind of like going into it like sight unseen, but it was still better than what I could have had if I'd say gone with student accommodation or just moved here and I don't know, had like an Airbnb for a short time and tried to find something by myself. Like it worked out well. So yeah, just like to pair up with others, to pair up with other people who are nice and who have kind of the same vision for living as you. Like you can kind of sometimes find some stuff that's interesting. But anyway, I hope that you enjoyed it, or it was useful. I doubt it, but hey, anyway, thanks for watching. Okay, it's true what they say, that the more you do this, the more you get used to it. And, you know, I've been spending like the past 15 minutes or so, like full on filming myself outside on a public bench. And I'm just like, yeah, you know what? It's okay. I almost don't even care if other people see me and think, ooh, what a crazy, like, or, oh, how self-important she is filming herself, and doesn't she have anything better to do on a Saturday afternoon? Or maybe she's famous and actually needs to do that. And I'm like, well, no, not famous. 2, don't have anything better to do apparently on a Saturday afternoon. And 3, it's kind of fun. I'm actually kind of like feeling like, hey, am I unlocking some code to being comfortable in the world? Maybe. Actually, no, people are coming. They look young. Oh no, they might know what I'm actually doing here, and this is really embarrassing.